I'm gonna send a request. Hi, Miss Kamala.
We
How
did
are
it.
you? I'm so
Oh my
excited to
God,
be talking
thank
to you. I
you.
like
Hold on.
literally
I gotta
freaked
turn
out
it
when
away.
it just booted out, but we're here, we're together.
Oh, there's
Woohoo.
Sarah. Hi, hi.
Hi.
Oh, it's good to see you guys. Storm, can I just tell you, Storm, I just watched Suicide Squad last week, not knowing we were going to be together. So
I
good.
know.
So
Thank
good.
you.
I
Thank you so much.
you this week. So good. Loved it.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
It just keeps stepping up the whole
It does.
like this like
It does. It takes you on a
it,
journey. It's like you don't know what's happening
it
next.
really does. And for everybody who hasn't seen it like that, for the first 5 minutes and then
It's
the
intense.
shit, good.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you
Ah,
so much.
about voting, yes.
I definitely watched this week too. And Storm, you just went back and forth. I was like, oh, look at this fire she's bringing.
I know it was an incredible project to be a part of, but I'm excited to be having this conversation with you, beautiful ladies. I've been looking forward to this all week, so I am ecstatic.
It's so good to see you guys. So let's talk about voting. Let's talk about that. How are you guys?
Let's do it. I mean, I'm excited to vote. I mean, I just turned 18, so it is my first opportunity to vote, obviously. I actually just got a sample ballot in the mail, which is very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a young person, I think it's important that we know that young voters make up half of the voting population, so we have a lot of power. But we also have to move from a space of education. So I'm just trying to figure out those emotions.
Well, I mean, I think that there's work that we all have to do, including those of us who are in elected positions to be accessible and to speak with folks about the issues as we think about them, but also to listen, right? And I think that's especially when we're talking about, so-called younger voters, first-time voters, uh, people who are early in their voting life. They have to be heard. You have to be heard, because the importance of voting and protecting voter rights is really about upholding the principles of our democracy. But the democracy is a democracy because it's supposed to be a representative government for the people, which
Right.
that the relationship should be a relationship where the people will drive the priorities, and they'll tell us their priorities by the way they vote, but also we need to listen. So with that, I want to know, what are the issues that are important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are so many issues that we can focus on, but when you think about what you want to do in the world, how you can be a civically engaged human, a civically engaged young human, you sometimes, and not speaking for my whole generation, but I know sometimes young people struggle with, what do I focus on? Do I focus on one thing, or do I focus on many things? And I feel like even if something, an issue is not directly affecting you, to know that it's affecting somebody else should be more than enough for you to want to try to help those people and try to help your global community. So whether that's gun reform or climate change or the criminal justice system or protecting the lives of immigrants, there's so many things that we can try to put our attention and our passion into, while trying to still, again, operating from a space of education and listening, like you said.
I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And it's, I think about the 2020 election. The youth turnout, younger voters, first-time voters, was historic. And I think it's important to remind all the folks who are part of this conversation right now, those of you who stood in line for hours, those of you who, you mailed in your ballot, you took the time to fill it out. The effort that you made included you ordering certain things, saying that this is what I want. And so, we heard that what you wanted is, you wanted to know, for example, that we would support HBCUs. So in the first 6 months, we've invested and committed to invest $2.6 billion in HBCUs. folks said, because when they voted in 2020, it was in the midst of the pandemic. We want to know that those of us who are unemployed through no fault of our own, because our businesses, the places where we work, are closed, we need relief. $1,400 checks went out, right? People who said, let's lift children out of poverty. The child tax credit has come to be, which is going to lift, half of America's children out of poverty, in particular, children of color. So I think it's important to also remind people that when you vote, elections matter, and you actually can get what you ask for and what you demand.
Right.
That there's a relationship, right? It's not just you're supposed to vote. It's your right and responsibility as a citizen. It is literally, you also have the right to get the things you want, and that's one of the ways to get them, is to express yourself through your vote. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have a question for you, Miss Kamala. As we've been talking about, youth are fighting across the country to have their voices be heard and for the right to vote. So what is the federal government doing to support us in that fight?
Well, one of the things we have to do, there are 2 bills in Congress right now, and the names of the bills are the For the People Act, and the other one is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So for the people, and it's about basically empowering voters, making sure that states like what we're seeing in Texas and Georgia, Montana, some other places, that we will have the ability to push back when states want to restrict voters' rights. And then the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is named after an incredible American hero. He passed away recently, but he was a member of Congress. His name was John Lewis. He marched with Dr. King, with Martin Luther King, and he fought his entire life for voting rights, but he was a fighter for LGBTQ rights, for immigrant rights, for equal rights for all people. So these 2 bills would strengthen the rules around making sure that it is not difficult for people to vote, and that states can't make it difficult for people to vote. So that's one of the things that right now we want to make sure that we get done, which is that those 2 bills get passed. Because again, sometimes you can judge your power by people then taking notice of your power expressing itself, and then they might want to suppress your power or weaken your power. So what happened is the youth vote was so powerful in 2020, and then we start seeing all these states trying to make it more difficult. And we got to fight back against that, and those 2 pieces of legislation would do that. And I'll just give you some examples. So for example, younger voters sometimes find it more difficult to vote because you may not have a car, right? So the good laws and the good rules say, okay, let's have vote by mail, early voting so you can figure out, or drop boxes so you can go by and drop in a box. Well, there are states who are trying to restrict the ease with which you could do that. Young voters, you may move around a lot, right? And if it's because you're living in different dormitories if you're in college, or you're living in different places because you're working in different places. Well, so we want to have same-day registration. So if you move, you don't have to go through a long. You can just vote. You can register to vote same day that you vote, right? And these are some of the things that make it easier, especially for young voters, to vote. And there are some states that are trying to restrict those rights. So we got to fight back against that.
Incredible.
And young people have really, and it's like first such an honor to be here and join y'all. My name's Sarah Dello. I'm the executive director of the Alliance for Youth Action, and I use she, her pronouns. At the Alliance, we have an incredible network of youth-led and focused groups across the country who have been fighting for voting rights. Groups like Next Up in Oregon, they passed the first automatic voter registration bill in the country. And as we were all stressing out during the pandemic about trying to make sure that we could do mail-in ballots and have postage paid for folks, they had already passed legislation to make that possible. Groups like Chicago Votes fought and got the first polling place in Cook County jails in the country. And now both Next Up and Chicago Votes are fighting to make sure people who are in prison can vote. Groups like Mississippi Votes are trying to re-enfranchise those who have had their voting rights taken away. I mean, the list is so incredible when folks are like, young people, they're not really engaged. All those stereotypes that are out there, we love to remind them, look at what young people have done. Look at the young people of Move, Texas, who have been in that state capitol until 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. trying to fight back against those voter suppression bills. It's so inspiring to see these young people take charge in their communities. And this is why it's so important then for the federal government to step in, because sometimes we don't always win those fights on the state level. Sometimes we have to take our states to court, like Loud Light, who on the 50th anniversary of the 26th Amendment that gave 18-year-olds the right to vote, they had to pull their staff from the field and stop registering young people to vote because they were threatened with being thrown in jail, with a massive fine, with a felony, just for registering people to vote. So it's such an honor to be here and uplift what young people are doing, and then to talk about, yes, the role of federal government too, because young people are putting the work in, but we need the Senate and the House to do their jobs too.
That's right. That's right. You are doing amazing work, Sarah, by the way. Like, honestly, you are out there. You are in the streets. You are organizing. It's really powerful. And thank you. And keep doing what you're doing. I know you got a lot of support behind you.
I consider myself lucky to be a hype woman for all the work that young people are leading. And so if folks need inspiration and they're like, what's going on with young people? Like, y'all just need to follow the Alliance for Youth Action, Twitter and IG, so y'all can see what young people are continuing to do, whether it's the groups in our network or the amazing power of our peers, whether it's Sunrise Movement or United We Dream or March for Our Lives or groups like Power California. Like, there's just so much powerful youth organizing that happens, and there's not enough of a light shining on it. And this feels like, let's give them support. And now, elected officials, time for y'all to do your job and get these bills passed.
That's right. Well, you were talking to Storm earlier about some of the issues that you care about. So something happened this week that I'm sure everybody knows about, but it was really scary. And what it is that a UN commission on Monday issued a report. They've been studying the issue of the climate crisis. And the report now, so the UN, the United Nations, so it's about like all the allies, the friends around the globe come together under the UN, right?
Yes.
And so all the nations and their experts most of the nations and their experts were a part of this study. And they did this report. And usually on climate, they're a little like, well, maybe this might happen, kind of think that might happen. This time, everybody, the report came out on Monday and said, let me break it down for you. By 2030, the globe is going to heat up by 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit more than where we are now. So for those of us, I'm a Californian, you see the wildfires, we would talk about wildfire season. Now we're talking, there's no such thing as wildfire season, it's all year round. The heat all over the country. We're seeing the drought. We're seeing farmers lose their entire crop because of these extreme weather conditions. We're seeing flooding, storms. And by 2030, the UN report that came out on Monday said by 2030, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Young voters, take control of this.
Yeah.
We have to. Of this. Let's make sure that we elect people who take this seriously, who are not denying it, who are not dealing by saving our planet for you.
Right.
And you for that.
Like you said, basically the proof is in the pudding. Like, we are seeing every day that we are being affected by this. There is a major city that has a huge countdown clock to basically like the end of the world because our elected officials and the people in power are not taking climate change seriously. And it's our world at stake. It's our future kids' lives at stake. So for it not to be taken seriously, for people to have selfish motives and not believe and be cognizant of science, it's disheartening because even though they may feel as though it's not affecting them, like I said before, it will affect all of us. So why not change it? Why not try to come together and create a change to where we can combat climate change? Because it's important, and it's going to affect all of us, whether you want to.
Right. Who you vote for will matter in terms of how the decision is made. Like, are we going to invest in renewable energy, like solar power and wind power? Are we going to have policies that are about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, about acknowledging that human beings and our behaviors have almost everything to do with what we're experiencing? So we want to make sure that we can adapt to the change, but we can also slow this thing down. And
Absolutely.
we need some bold leadership, and you all will vote to make that happen.
Well, and Madam Vice President, I'm originally from Bakersfield, California, and I have asthma because I grew up in terrible air quality in California's Central Valley. It's an issue that certainly has driven me to engage when I was really young and to start organizing. And, as we saw from the results of the 2020 election, part of why we're so excited to have within 10 points from 2016, a massive increase. And part of the reason why was exactly this issue, because young people are so concerned about our climate, about our planet's future. And this is why they have been pushing time and again to fight for a Green New Deal, to make sure that we're holding these electeds accountable, because the clock is ticking. We are over time, and whether it's the federal government, state, or local, young people are engaged. From Miami, like Engage Miami is working on this issue from the perspective of sea level rise and gentrification, to Montana, where Ford Montana is looking at this issue through public lands. It's just such an important issue. And I know that young people are so eager to continue to engage with the White House on this. And so, because it is just, this is why they were voting. This is why that turnout happened.
Or you take, for example, Storm, you were talking earlier about gun violence and
Yes.
laws. So your vote can determine whether the people who want reasonable gun safety laws like background checks and assault weapons bans are in office, or the people who don't understand and appreciate the importance of that are in office, right? Who you vote for, who you elect, will make the difference on issues like gun violence and whether we're going to have reasonable gun safety laws or not.
Right.
But there's so many issues. I mean, you talk about even like what we need to do to decrease the racial wealth gap, and who's going to be in office who, one, acknowledges that it exists, acknowledges that women are still not paid as much as men, acknowledges that we have huge gaps in terms of what's going on in our education system, right? You guys make the decisions about who's in office and whether they care about those issues or not, and then act on it. I almost think of voting in some ways is that when you vote, it's almost like you're placing an order. You're saying, this is what I want, right? And
Right.
we saw
So we know the president can do it. So we're so hopeful that this is some administrative action that we're going to see coming down the pipeline, because this issue is just impacting so many of us. So between canceling student debt, making college free, there is just such a bright outlook that our generations are pretty desperate for, because we've just been through so much economic turmoil in our lives.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And including, I mean, even I'll connect that to also the climate thing. We're creating a climate corps, right? Which is jobs that are good paying jobs. The other thing about our administration, the president and I feel very strongly, we are a pro-union administration. We believe in workers' rights. We believe in the importance of workers being agents that are not you know, not, you know, we're going to fight for $15 an hour minimum wage, but, you know, what people really need is 30, 40 and more dollars an hour to be able to live a quality of life that allows them to have freedom, right? So these are the things that we fight for.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go
So
on,
you're
Adam.
going to be your first, well, so this is your first ballot. You just got that.
Yes, I got it. I got it in the mail yesterday, and I was like, this is just divine timing. The universe is working in our favor. And it's exciting and it's nerve-wracking to be able to have so much power in your hands and so much power in a booklet that you get to mail or that you get to drop off at a poll. But you have to think about, like, again, our lives are depending on the votes that we make and the officials that we elect. So I feel more than grateful in moving in a space of gratitude to be able to be of age to make my voice heard. But again, I have to be cognizant and know that I know a fraction of what I need to know about voting and voting rights. So being able to have conversations like this or be involved with organizations like Fair Fight Action, Miss Stacey Abrams' organization to combat voter suppression in Georgia. I am born and raised in Georgia, so that is my home state, but we do have a lot of voter suppression. So to be able to go on that website or have conversations or listen to conversations that Miss Stacey is having, or like you said, reaching out to our congressional reps and our senators and really telling people how we feel outside of voting is incredible. So I'm excited for me and all my homies to be able to vote and continue to get our future ballots. And it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. But again, I'm grateful.
Well, and Storm's just doing just the amazing important work. Like, first, congrats, like, first time voting. I remember my first time voting is just such an important life marker. And we should all be celebrating young people the first time that they're voting and making sure you have all the information you need. I mean, I'm guessing because this is 2021, that's a local election, and we don't always have great turnout. That's why it's so important to make sure that young people have the tools and support they need to organize their peers. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, the Washington Bus was doing incredible work to educate young people about voting in the Washington primaries. Minnesota Youth Collective this week was doing work to educate young people about turning out for their local primaries in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And so this is just why it's so important. Like, one, Storm, thank you for uplifting and for voting. This is so important, and we got to shine those lights on those great organizations, all the tools they need to make the decisions that are important to them about their communities, right? To push electeds on the issues that they care about, to hold them accountable, and yeah, just keep on organizing to make our communities more just.
Absolutely.
And never let anyone take your voice from you. You know, my mother had many sayings, and she would say to me, "You never let anyone tell you who you are. You tell them who you are."
Mm.
And your vote is part of you telling people who you are, right? It's your powerful thing. And we never want to let anybody express your voice. And one of them is with your vote. So, well, it's good to be with you guys.
Yes, thank
Thank
you, Madam
you.
Vice President. Thank you, Sarah.
And listen, thank you, Storm, for using your celebrity and your voice in so many important ways, including this. It really makes a difference. And Sarah, thank you for all the hard work you are doing on the ground every day and organizing. It really, thank you.
I mean, Madam Vice President, like, I feel so lucky to be here because I'm just like I said, I get to be the hype woman for a lot of incredible and young organizers who frankly would love to meet with you. And so I'll have to make organizer hat says in with an ask, and we are ready to continue the conversation with you.
Let's do that. All right, guys.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Storm.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This was an incredible conversation. We talked about all things voting rights and youth voting. And we're sending you love. Thank you, guys.